Welcome, everyone. Awesome to have you here joining us tonight. Maybe this morning, this afternoon, lunchtime, wherever it is for you in the world. It's evening for me, and it's early morning for my special guest, our UXpert for this session, Mads Soegaard. Mads is joining us from the Interaction Design Foundation. We're really big fans of his work. It's a non-profit organization which specializes in education and career advancement for designers. And tonight, Mads is joining me to answer the questions that I've solicited from you, our community, over the last couple of weeks. Specifically, questions about getting a UX education, a practical approach to getting a UX education. I'm excited to be joined by Mads tonight. I'm going to throw it over to him to give us some context around this session.
Yeah, so good morning, Hawk. It's early morning in Denmark, and I had to put up these lights here. This is our one of our video studios, and I had to put up lights because this time in the morning in Denmark, it's completely almost pitch dark outside. So we don't really see the sun like these 4 months in the winter, and so it's don't ever come here during the winter. If you want to visit Denmark, come here in the summer. Then it's a magical place, but in the winter, it's just dark and gray and rainy. So on that note, then my name is, thanks for the introduction, Hawk. My name is Mads, and I founded the Interaction Design Foundation way back in 2002. And we are a nonprofit organization who specializes in career advancement for user experience designers. Specifically, our specialty is online user experience courses, or basically courses revolving around the general theme of design. So user experience design, UI design, design thinking, and so on. So there's a bunch of related terms, and that's our specialty. We don't do anything else, and we've been doing this since 2002. Actually, then I'd just like to give some context to that. The reason I actually founded the Interaction Design Foundation, and the reason that I find this Q&A so interesting, is that the whole reason I founded it was that I felt it was it was really unfair that design knowledge and design skills have traditionally been reserved for people who are fairly well off, and also people in the you could say the Western intellectual hemisphere. And you'd have to go to like a super expensive design school, or these skills and the knowledge, design knowledge, was really hard to come by online, and it still is. And so our goal is to lower the cost of high quality design education. So that means up the quality and lower the cost, and that's what we're incessantly working on. And our medium is the online medium, because that's how we are able to lower the cost and up the quality, because we don't have like big campuses, and that's that's our take on UX education. And then we have local groups, I think in almost all major cities around the world. I can't remember how many hundred countries, to get that physical dimension into learning user experience. Some of these local groups are absolutely fantastic and thriving. Some of them are going a bit slow, so we're continually trying to optimize that. So that's just to give a bit of context to who I am, and so coming from where I do, then of course I'll really try to not to be biased towards online courses and online learning. I'll really try to be objective, but just keep that in mind that I might be slightly biased. I'll remind you whenever I feel I'm getting too biased.
Hey, that works for us, because as you know, our medium is also online, and most of the people listening, in fact all of the people listening to us right now, are people that know us via that medium. So we hear you. So are you ready to jump into some questions?
Absolutely, yeah.
Brilliant. So as I mentioned before, we've got a combination of questions from an email that we sent out, from our online forums, which are a very valuable part of our community, and also from our Twitter audience. So the first one is from the email that we sent out specifically about this session, and it's a good open starting question, and it is, how can we effectively learn practical UX skills?
Well, actually, first of all, I should just mention that whenever I hear someone with a Kiwi accent and an Australian accent, I get like a really warm and fuzzy feeling inside, because I used to live in Tasmania, and I found I found it absolutely fantastic. I had a wonderful time there. So
Thank you.
yeah. So how can you learn practical UX skills? So that's
And practical, I think.
yeah, well, emphasis on practical. So I'd say doing. So the doing dimension is what it's all about. And then how do you go about doing? So I would say that, let's say that you buy a book. Then it's incredibly important that you just don't sit there and passively read the book, but you actually, put those things into like action. And if you read a book about customer journey maps or personas or something, then it's absolutely essential that you start to do it. So even if you don't have a job as a UX designer, then I'd find it incredibly important that you just start, doing. And it could be do personas with your friends. It could be usability testing with your friends. That's really not relevant. Of course, it's better if you have a job as a UX designer already, and then you can, do this with clients and so on. But often, if you're new to UX, then that you don't have that as a possibility. So I'd say, as long as you just start doing, then that's the key thing. So, for example, when we construct courses in the Interaction Design Foundation, we put a lot of emphasis on exercises and templates and open-ended questions. And you'll also see people who answer those open-ended questions. Some of them will be just, hey, I'll just do whatever is necessary, and other people will be like, they really put a lot of effort into it. So that's the and so of course you should be in the latter group. You should really try to put a lot of effort into it.
Cool.
So yeah.
Cool. So yeah, buy a book. Just get.
So do the doing dimension is what it's all about. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you for that. Another one from email. What are the UX career or job options for those of us with really good people or interpersonal communication skills? So good communicators who would prefer to work with progressive companies or non-profits, but aren't particularly strong at coding. I guess the question there really is, how do we match our own skills with the UX positions that are available?
Yeah, and that's super interesting that you mentioned coding, because that's a question that often comes up. I'd say that in some regions, it's really, there's some tendency to look at a user experience designer as someone who can also branch into coding. And that, and so I'd say that for me personally, I love programming, by the way. I'd say that it's important for you as a UX designer to know coding and to sort of know the fundamentals of how code is constructed, and this whole idea of this whole approach of formalism. How do you actually take these ideas and essentially write them into code and make them come alive? Because one of my favorite sayings is ideas are worthless without execution. And by extension, you could say that ideas are worthless without implementation. So all these wonderful plans that we make, and they need to be written down to like super rigid and super terse code in order to come alive. And again, and bring a smile on our users' faces. So it's really important to know, I'd say, the fundamentals of code, because otherwise you could fall into that trap of being that wonderful designer who's like, making post-it notes and all these wonderful plans, and then they just never come alive. So I'd say that's important. On that note, I think you should leave programming to the programmers. So I would recommend that you specialize in user experience design and UI design, and just keep your knowledge of programming as sort of at a level where you can interface with programmers and you have meaningful conversations about them with regards to implementation, but no further than that. I would say that there's enough. I mean, there's a ton of knowledge and skills that need to be acquired in that spectrum from user experience design over in UI design. So you need to, everything from usability testing to user research to, there's a ton of like skills that are needed for you as a UX designer and also a UI designer. So I'd say focus on that, make that your specialty. So that's what I'll do. And then also on that note, then I would also advise against becoming like, oh, I'm a user researcher, or something like, oh, I'm a usability tester, and that's only what I do. I find that to be too narrow. So I think there's always this definition of what is a specialization and what is generalization. And some people say, well, user experience, is that like a generalization across multiple domains and so on? And I'd say, no, that's actually a specialty. It's a very well sort of thought out set of skills and disciplines that are needed, and that is a specialty. So that's not like you're not like a generalist as a user experience designer. Actually, computer science started out like way back in the 70s or 60s, partially also in the 80s. In the 70s. Computer science was not considered like a specialization. It was like, hey, but you're basically just a hands-on mathematician, because that was what it was considered to be. So, yeah.
So can I just clarify? So when you say that to a degree you think that that UXers should know some code, are you talking more than just markup here? Are you talking deeper than just HTML and CSS? To what degree do you believe that? Because that's what we get asked a lot, and I think there needs to be a pretty clear definition put around what some coding means. Yeah,
I would say more than markup. So that depends on your medium. So if your medium are apps, as a user experience designer or designer, let's just say in a broad sense, you could be working on products, services, apps, so websites and so on. So it depends on your medium. So of course, it would not be markup if you were like doing an iOS app and only doing that. I would just say that markup is not quite enough. It has to be something with like, if, then, so something like that, just some structured thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, I just think, take like an online course in programming. It doesn't really matter what kind. You do JavaScript or C or PHP or something like that, but just get that really frustrating and like get that sort of merger between frustration and joy when you're like, why doesn't this stupid computer or compiler understand what I'm telling it? And why doesn't like that button show up? And then at the same time, get that wonderful feeling where like, wow, I just created this thing and you can click it.
Right.
So,
okay.
So just get that basic understanding of programming, that's all, because then you'll exactly know why all these weird questions are coming from developers. When you just find this wonderful design and this, groundbreaking, thing that can save the world, and the programmer just looks at you like you've just, just came down outer space. So
understand how to grow a plant without necessarily knowing why the plant is growing. Get some understanding of the basic concepts without being able to necessarily write the code yourself.
Exactly. That's the key.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. I think that was a good answer. Okay. So from our readers survey, our 2017 readers survey, one that is a personal favorite of mine. What professional development would you recommend for UX professionals? How can they progress once they're already perhaps in a UX role?
Yeah, so that's a particularly interesting question. I would say that it's super important to keep learning. I mean, I'm an addict of learning, and I keep learning all the time. And I've continuously, I really try to look at myself. Well, I mean, I always remind myself, I feel dumb in a lot of respects, because I always think of, wow, I should learn this, or I can learn this, or I don't know this, and so on. So personally, I'm addicted to learning. I would say that it's incredibly important to keep learning. Like, for example, in the Interaction Design Foundation, we have like we cover the whole spectrum from like getting your first job as a user experience designer to like really advanced courses. So we have like super specialized courses on, for example, augmented reality, virtual reality, user experience for augmented reality and virtual reality, UX management, with a lot of interviews from people. So we have super specialized courses, and that's how that's our take on professional development, is that it's important to the more you progress, the more you learn, to also remind yourself of how little you actually know, and how that there's an infinite depth to learning. And that's why I said that I remind myself that that I feel that I'm quite dumb, because I always I discover new areas where I'm like, wow, I didn't know this. And so that's important, to keep that attitude of like, wow, just by, UX management, wow, that's a whole sub-discipline, and it's a merger between, this wonderful thing called the user experience and this enormously challenging thing called management and people, and how do they act in groups, and oh my God. So I would say go into those specializations, and then I would also issue sort of a warning, and that is the illusion of learning. So when you go on Medium, for example, I'm not saying that Medium is a bad thing, by the way, but when you go on Medium, it can also be a bit like going on social media. So you get this illusion of learning, and you're like, wow, this is interesting, and okay, and then they did this over at Dropbox or something, and it's like, yeah, but you may feel good as you're reading it, but like, are you really like exercising your muscles? So it's a bit like going to the gym, and you'll see some people hanging out at the gym and talking and so on, and you'll see other people just completely focused without looking at their mobile phones, and just looking horribly, because they're just working so hard, building up a sweat. So I'd say just maybe actually don't read so many articles, and don't focus so much on the news, what had just happened at Google. I mean, yeah, focus more on timeless knowledge, because if you look at the time that you're investing in that, then timeless knowledge will just help you like for the next 20 years or 30 years, or hopefully for all eternity, as opposed to something happened at Apple, and do you really, what can you really learn from that? So that's another super important principle when we develop courses for our editorial team, is that timeless knowledge, always timeless knowledge. So something that's super valuable, that can last for like decades. That's, for example, why we never develop any courses on tools, because a tool will get outdated in a few years. There's some tools like Photoshop, for example, when you talk UI design, have been around for ages, but I mean, the user interface keeps changing every year, of course. But employers will not hire you because you can use a tool. Employers will hire you because you understand human motivations, you understand, people in groups, what they do, and they'll hire you based on the design skills that you can use to create results, to create business value, to create, smiles on people's faces, and that's another type of knowledge and skills. That's just not about like how to use a tool.
Cool. No, that makes sense as well. So focus on real life, not on gossip, I guess is what you're saying. Focus on the news, not on the social media.
Yeah, and try to go for as timeless knowledge as possible. So look at the sort of the best before date on your knowledge. It's like, okay, so I learned a tool, yeah, but what about in 2 years? So more as humans and human motivations and psychology and our perceptual system, for example, there's not really like, that's fairly invariant. And I mean, the human perceptual system has remained constant over like some 10,000 or 20,000 or however long. So those would be, that's a more stable skill set and knowledge. Whereas if you learn some tool, that's not going to be around in 10,000 years. So. Cool.
All right, we've got one. We've got a live question from a listener, from Amitav, from YouTube. I'm a senior developer, and I often interact with clients, and I'd like to know how I should go about looking for improvement in my skills, and how could I judge that I am improving? So I guess senior practitioners Yeah.
Fantastic. So a developer who's interested in UX design, or at least like, interfacing with clients and customers, absolutely wonderful. So I'd say user experience design is the cure, or is the answer to your question. Because of course, I mean, I'm biased. I love it, and you do too, and the audience probably will agree with me. Because it's such a fantastic like interface between development and the customers and the users out there. And so the person who's asking this question, the developer, that's the missing link to really understand customers, users, and so on. That is user experience design, because it provides those structured, it includes the knowledge and the work processes and the skills and the tools that will bridge that gap between the code and the thing going on out here among the users and customers. So I'd find it absolutely fantastic that person. I think I would really wholeheartedly recommend that person to go all into UX design, and the person will be so immensely valuable, because like a developer who has people skills and user experience skills is just a fantastic person to have on a team. It's absolutely fantastic, and the developer does not have to become like the UX expert or something. It's just that interfacing, that bridge between that you can bridging that gap. Fantastic. So
cool, brilliant. And another one from YouTube from Tasneem, who is a faithful Ask the UXperts audience member. So thanks, Tasneem, for your question. Tasneem asks, which course would you suggest for someone who has already been in the UX industry for more than 5 years? So someone that's intermediate to senior, what course, or I guess what path of training would you recommend for someone in that particular part of their career?
So I would advise against thinking against it, or advise against thinking in like a singular course. So I'd see this as a continuous journey, and the reason for may be that, for example, when people break into UX design, they're very much. I see that online a lot. You hear people asking, so which course should I start? Should I start with this course or that course from that provider and that provider?
You hear that?
Yeah, and that's because the prices are so quite extremely inflated, because of the mission of Interaction Design Foundation, of course, I'm biased. So it's like, that's the whole thing we're battling against, is that these prices should not be so high. I mean, we should use this technology to become so scalable and so affordable that this should not be out there. Which course should I choose, because it's such a vast investment, and then I'll be out of money after that. So you should be able to, the courses should be more affordable. So in this particular person's situation, I would say it's not about one course. It's about strengthening your muscles in different areas. That's our whole editorial strategy in Interaction Design Foundation, in order to retain members over like 5 or 7 years in our community, is to like offer, like, I think we have like some 30+ courses that just are very specialized in each their area, because that's really how I think you should go about learning, is to continuously train your muscles in different ways. So if you go to the gym and just do the same thing over again, you won't really like progress, but you need to train your mental muscles in different ways. So that I would say take lots of courses, but just find that, find the best ones.
Right. So maybe start at a low price point, look online and take a whole lot of courses in very disparate and different kind of just little parts of our discipline, until you find something that really you connect with. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. And you can also go of like interesting and wonderful books. The thing about books is that it will require like a lot of self-discipline in order to put that into action, because it's this thing like, if you're just passively absorbing a book and like, oh, this is a wonderful idea, it can create that illusion that I warned against earlier, illusion of learning, whereas you really need to like, okay, take your pen and your paper, or go into the world and try to really apply this knowledge that you have from this wonderful book. So it does require a lot of more discipline. Course for example, from the Interaction Design Foundation or other course providers, you have a bit more structure, because then they're like, hey, you need to answer these quizzes, or like answer, we have like a grading by instructors, so you need to like answer like open-ended questions or quizzes. The instructor will then read 1 to 10, and that'll be part of like how you progress towards your course certificate. So in an online medium, you can create a bit more like, you know, a bit more structure around your learning, so that we're, you know, gently pushing you into like a structure, and so you don't have to have as much self-discipline as you do with a book. I then say, still, you need quite a bit of discipline or self-discipline to do online learning, but self-discipline can be learned. So that's it can be absolutely trained and learned. But still, you know, when you're on your mobile phone or on your desktop computer, it's easy to like just switch over. Let's just see what's going on here in social media, and then you're distracted. Whereas if you're in a physical classroom, then you're locked inside the room. You can't escape. You know, you may have your mobile phone and can go on social media on that, but you're locked in the room. And so that, I guess, is also the spectrum that you're in, the pros and cons spectrum of like books, online courses, and physical classroom-based courses. Is that you can see the degree to which you have a scaffold or structure around you. You know, in a classroom, you can actually have little self-discipline because you're locked in the room, and the instructor will look at you and say, wake up. Whereas, you know, online courses, you have some structure, but of course it's easy to just switch over to social media. And in a book, it's also easy to get distracted. So so that comes back to, then you need to know yourself and how you are with regards to self-discipline. And so when you're choosing your education, then of course you need to keep in mind not only, so you need to know yourself when you're choosing a particular style of learning, with the added note that self-discipline can be learned. So, you know, you don't need to say, okay, well, you know, I'm really easily distracted, so I should pay like $40,000 per year to go to the school, because then I have a classroom-based model where I'm like locked in a room, and then that's better for me, because then that's a huge investment. So shouldn't you perhaps then try to train your self-discipline instead, and then you'll save the $40,000, and maybe that's better for you in the long term.
Sure. So experiment, I guess, is part of that answer.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, I've got another one to throw at you. So again, from YouTube, Ina asks, I really want to transition into UX, but I'm coming from a non-design or a non-tech background. Do I need a proper qualification? E.g., do I need a university degree or a boot camp like General Assembly or Career Foundry? What's the best way for somebody coming from a completely non-design, non-tech background to break into UX?
Yeah, that's a super interesting question.
We hear that one a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'd return to my first point in this Q&A, and it's about the doing. And because there aren't really like a sort of surefire way of like getting a job or like doing the right thing, because then of course, you know, you would have written that article. So like, here's the recipe for success, and step 1, step 2. So it really depends on a lot of factors. For example, as I just mentioned in my previous answer, your learning style. So how do you actually learn? Do you really need to be in a classroom, or do you have that sort of self-assurance that you can sort of learn by yourself through self-discipline and going out there and doing? So that's one consideration in that big puzzle. So I would say again, it's about doing. So taking courses where you can do practical exercises and then doing these things. and not being shy. So let's say that, this person obviously hits this conundrum again, that in order to break into UX design or in order to get a job, you need experience. In order to get, like, how does the person do that? And I would say the way I would do it is, simply start doing. So I would do usability tests with my friends. I would do customer journey maps on some like made up project. I would offer my help completely ships to like any type of company who are willing to take me on, but still have interesting colleagues and ambitious colleagues. And then I would work my butt off just to create results. At the same time, in my spare time, I would take online courses and try to take all those practical exercises into my perhaps unpaid job. At the same time, I would start building a portfolio, and then you don't need to be like, you shouldn't be like shy about this, because you can build a portfolio without having a job. So you can do like a usability test on some of your friends, and then you can like include like a snippet of that 1 minute or 30 seconds of that usability study or test, and you can say, here, I've tried to do, I've done like a usability test, and so you can actually build a portfolio without having a job. And I'm not saying that you should then lie and then say, hey, I'm a usability test expert, and what you in reality did is you did like some tests with your friends.
Yeah.
So you of course shouldn't lie. I mean, any type of healthy relationship is based on a truthful calibration of expectations. But what you are showing in your portfolio then is that you show initiative and you show like a tendency toward action. Is that, hey, I'm passionate about this. I'm doing it. I'm doing something. I'm just trying. And employers or future colleagues will recognize that sort of drive, that passion, because that even if the person has only done a usability test on 3 of his or her friends, then that drive and passion is like, I want to do this. If you release that into like a company, then of course, then in 2 years or 1 year or 2 months, that knowledge and that skill set will have progressed, and all of a sudden that person will in a few years have become the usability expert. So that drive and that passion. So to answer the question, so to answer more sort of directly this question from your reader, I would say it's about, so if UX design and design is your passion, then just start doing, and then doing concrete things, and then I'm sure it will work out. Don't worry about if you come from like a some other background. People have come from like accounting and then found out that, oh my God, I went into accounting because my parents thought it'd be like a really a good thing to do, and like, oh, I could work with a big brand and become like an accountant. But then I've just found out that it made me die slowly. And then I found this wonderful thing called design, and wow, and then, so that person should not be apologetic for, oh, I'm a trained accountant. Yeah, then that person should say, wow, I'm a trained accountant. So I have like I'm trained and I'm good at sort of rigid, thinking patterns. So, because that's also essential for when you get into like implementation and programming. But then I found this passion, and now I'm just working my butt off in order to acquire more and more skills and more knowledge within design. And people will see that and recognize that, and it's completely hireable, despite not having like, hey, I've got a design degree from this super fancy and very expensive university. So
brilliant.
I would say don't be apologetic about it. Don't be shy. Just do, and just
Cool.
Follow your path.
I like it. Okay, I'm going to segue slightly. The next question is another one from our readers survey, and it is, how can we address the gap between boot camps and real life industry expectations?
Yeah, super interesting question. Also, I'd say that that gap is perhaps actually like a healthy sign, because it's so the gap is all about, you may go into this boot camp, maybe it takes a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and perhaps it's even actually like quite costly, perhaps even very, very costly. And then then they may work on your portfolio, and you then pitch to like an employer after that, and then you're like, yeah, but and you may have problems getting a job. And so I think it's the problem here. So I think it's perhaps like a healthy sign of employers being critical of boot camps, and I think it's a matter of like the calibration of expectations not being well adequate, because you can't expect to become a user experience designer from scratch. We'll take you through a 10-week course, and then you'll end up like completely hireable and so on. If you think of it in terms of, just imagine if you said that to like people who want to become doctors, just take this course, and then after that you'll be ready to like cure patients. Like, yeah, but are you really sure that you're ready to take on that? Do we really want this person to work on like a product used by millions and millions of people after 10 weeks and be really influential in key business decisions? Because that is what a user experience will be doing. It's all about the users and the customers and how we interact with them. I mean, this is like business critical things. So that you can't gain that knowledge in 10 weeks. At the other sort of, so right after saying that, I should also say that does not mean that you should then be scared if you're like listening to this and you're like, hey, but I'm a marketing person and I just want to break into UX design and I have no knowledge and no skills in user experience, whatever. You shouldn't be afraid. And then think, okay, well, it does require like 6 years this expensive school or something. So that's not what I'm saying either. I'm just saying that it's a calibration of expectations. The person who asked the question just before, if that person has, that drive and passion and so on, I would absolutely definitely hire that person to become a user experience designer, with the note that the person needs to gain more muscle and to do more training, so the person would not be released into like business critical decisions right away. So I think it's just a matter of yeah. So I just thought I thought I had another point. Oh, I can't remember.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Would you like me to jump on to the next question?
Yeah. So hang on. Just boot camps and calibration of expectations. Yeah. Let's go to the next question.
Cool. No problem. So the next question.
Oh yeah. No. I just wanted to. Yeah. Okay. So one point. So for example, like in the Interaction Design Foundation, we have one course called "Become a User Experience Designer from Scratch," and it probably takes a couple of months. And the point is that after those couple of months, you will not have become a user experience designer, because one of the key points of the course is to take you through like a helicopter ride, above the landscape of user experience, and expose you to the various sort of sub-disciplines and components and so on. So, and it'll have lots of links to other courses and some material from other courses also, so that you sort of get that sort of breadth and understanding of, wow, there's a lot here going on. And I need to like strengthen my muscles within these areas. A fully rounded user experience designer. So that is, again, yeah, it just touches upon this point of calibration of expectations. Is that it's a matter of you not being like a fully fledged doctor able to cure patients after 10 weeks or 2 months, or but that you have a path set out ahead of you. Yeah. Sure.
No, that makes sense. Cool. All right. I've got two related questions, both from YouTube. One from Catherine, which says that there's obviously new technologies every day, artificial intelligence, virtual reality. How can courses help keep design students up to date with these technologies? And Dilip at the same time says, how do we study for technologies like AI, future technologies? So how can we stay stay constant? How can we stay relevant? How can we stay up to date with these really fast changing technologies?
Yeah, so I would say that it's a matter of aiming for timeless knowledge, because there are certain constants that are, for example, the human perceptual system, certain cognitive sort of patterns. So there are certain things that are timeless and stable across millennia. And then, of course, there are some fast-paced changes in technology, and then you have AI, and then you have virtual reality, and so on. So technology changes very fast. But that's actually okay, because, for example, storytelling. I mean, how to tell a story, how to like narrative thread in a story, that hasn't really fundamentally changed over like a huge span of time. So, and when you design like augmented reality, virtual reality, it's it's also about storytelling. So just like when you make like a wireframe for a website, it's you're constructing some paths, and you're trying to like mold some behavior for you you're trying to mold or shape the behavior of your users or customers along some sort of path or storyline, and you're trying to like make them take a left here or right there based on a certain choice and so on. And so that those storytelling structures are are not irrespective of the medium, but they still, I mean, you can that knowledge that you have around storytelling, narrative threads, wireframes, will also be applicable in virtual reality, augmented reality. So, but that's a key thing. Just go for this sort of the more stable and timeless knowledge, because otherwise you'll get like stressed and confused. It's like, oh wow, we have this new like AI coming out, and what does that do to UX? Am I prepared for that? Is my knowledge getting outdated? And then you hit the classic fear of missing out, the FOMO, and then you'll find yourself like scrambling across Medium articles and all sorts of other, and then you're wasting your time all of a sudden, instead of like just taking a deep breath, just taking two steps back, and you say, okay, what's at play here? What's going on? Oh, right, there's some common themes here, like storytelling. Then better to learn those fundamental things, as opposed to like, having that fear of missing out. And so that's, and again, I'm biased because that's our editorial principle in the Interaction Design Foundation, is like, timeless knowledge. So yeah, that's where I'm.
Okay, that's helpful.
That's the backdrop.
So I've got the next question is one that's important to me, because it's one that I get asked a lot in the UX mastery community, and it's a difficult one for me to answer, because it's really personal for people. So, and then is one end of the spectrum, James from YouTube is asking, do companies in general still prefer, or do they still like to hire junior designers, and what's the market looking for new guys? But the thing that I'm passionate about is the other end of the spectrum. I'm a 52-year-old X-ray technician with no degree or formal training, and I've been told it's unrealistic for me to try and switch careers at this late stage due to my age. So what are your thoughts? Where is the market lying as far as age and experience goes? Is there room for everybody, or is there not? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so my thought, I mean, first of all, of course, it really depends on the individual employer. So some people will not like people who have red hair, and thus they won't hire people with red hair or black skin or whatever it is, or at a certain age level. So you'll always bump into those things. It's like, oh wow, you've got like a few stint of like gray hair. Oh, that's really bad. So we won't hire you. So you'll or the vice versa. It's like oh no, you're not even 40 yet. You're not 40 yet. Then you're not smart.
Yeah.
Just ignoring all of that, then I'd say it's about passion and it's about doing. So I know people who have been really, really, really old at the age of 21, And I know people who are like 60 or 70 who are not like old. So it really, like, I know the cliche that age is just a number, but I really, really, really believe that. And so if this particular person, your reader, is 52, I'd say it's completely irrelevant. It's the passion, it's his or her passion, and his or her self-discipline and sort of that forward motion that really counts. So I just say go for it. When you, as an employer, if you're sane, is perhaps not the right word, but I mean, if you as an employer see someone with passion and drive, I mean, you'd be crazy not to try to leverage that, because when you have a person who's like truly passionate about what he or she is doing, has self-discipline, self-reliance, and wants to work his or her butt off, not in terms of the absolute number of hours, but really like just work intensely because of that passion, then of course, you should align, your business objectives with that person's passion, and then magic happens, and love and rainbows and everything else. So yeah, and similarly, I'd say as a junior, then it's about, again, the passion and doing and energy, because so these two people, let's say the 21-year-old junior person and the 52-year-old person, they both feel a bit like insecure, perhaps. But what's the about insecure? So I compensate, and that is what will get you the job, or make you more happy in life in general, and all sorts of other personal and professional goals.
Cool. So be true to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And just work hard, be nice to people, and just go for your passions. It sounds so simple, but that's really, really.
Sure, I agree with you. Cool. All right. A bit of a philosophical segue now, perhaps, maybe not. Do you think we need an accreditation system? This is from Ari on our forums. Do you think we need an accreditation system where UX becomes an accredited profession, and that we work under a code of ethics or a code of conduct? Do you think that it needs to be more formalized? I guess is what he's asking.
Yeah. Super interesting and very complex, and very can get into the philosophical. It can become like a philosophical segue. I would say, do we need like some sort of accreditation or certification? Okay, so if we compare ourselves to doctors, so doctors have this, they have the human body, psyche, and it's remained fairly stable over the past like 10,000 years. So you have like a more like stable and fixed object of study or object of practice. And of course, our knowledge and skills around the human body changes all the time, and it gets expanded. And so I'm not saying that it's just, that a doctor now versus 200 years ago, it's exactly the same thing. But still you have something that's more stable. On the other side, let's look at a user experience. That is constantly changing due to a number of reasons. And I'm not actually talking about technology. So of course there's AI and VR and bigger, more processing power, whatever is changing on the technological side. But there's also other things at play here. So there's the actual, definition of what we are as a discipline. So if you Google definition of UX design, you'll probably find 2 trillion, search results. And it's because these terms are changing all the time. So, for example, design thinking has a term because there's some institutions, some companies, some individuals who have like an interest in promoting that term, and then they're very successful in doing that. So then it suddenly pops up, maybe go away again, maybe it'll probably, replace some of the meanings of user experience. And so what the fancy word is social constructionism. So that reality, social reality, is continually constructed and reconstructed all the time based on all the conversations we're having, the books that are being produced, and so on. So we user experience, like any other term, well, actually, like most other terms, is inherently unstable over time. And so the question on certification or accreditation is a sort of a symptom of that. Is that, oh my, this is like so unstable. And what is it? Like, can we please have some stability, people? And so the question is that type of symptom. And so I really don't know what to answer, because yes, it'd be really nice with some stability, but then on the other hand, then we're trying to make something that's inherently unstable, because it is social constructionism in action. We're trying to make something that's inherently unstable stable. So I'd say, and it also depends. For example, if you go to certain places globally, you'll find sort of local definitions of things. So if you go to like San Francisco Bay Area, interaction design, as is that's this. And then at the same time, I'm at a conference in in Berlin, and then there's a completely different perception of that, and like who's right and who's wrong. That's really difficult to answer. So case in point, when I founded the Interaction Design Foundation in 2002, interaction design as a term was, in my opinion, actually more appropriate than user experience, and it was getting more popular also. So if I were to refound the Interaction Design Foundation today, I probably would call it the User Experience Foundation. So these things are, which is quite annoying, because like, can we please have some stability around these terms? But so this was like an incredibly vague answer to that question.
I think that probably says something about the state of play, to be honest, and that's potentially the question was posed.
Yeah, and that's also another case in point, is that, for example, in the Interaction Design Foundation, we say that our course certificates are industry recognized, because more and more employers will recognize them, because we've been around for so long and are like OCD about the quality of our courses. So, but we never use the word certification, and of course this, and that's the reason for this, is that it's a dangerous word, because certification, what does that actually mean? And isn't that it brings up this whole sort of discussion, which is a wonderful discussion, but may also lead down to confusion and a wrong calibration of expectations, and we don't want that. So
cool. I think we've probably only got time for one more, but possibly two. I've got two related ones. Both from our forums. The first part of the question is, how does one get around this issue of having to already have worked in UX in order to work in UX? So that whole chicken and egg, I need experience in order to get a job. And then Chris asks a similar question, but maybe with the answer involved. He sees a lot of talk about formal internships or apprenticeships. Is that the best way to get experience? So I guess, what would you recommend was the best way to get experience, partly to build a portfolio, partly to have that step in the door, partly to say, I know what I'm doing? What's your thoughts there?
It's a super good question, because let's say that I'm at sort of I'm at square one, and I want to really become like a great, fantastic user experience designer. So, and I have limited funds like everyone else on this planet. And then where should I invest my funds? What should I do with my time, and so on? And so I'd say, yes, you could pay $40,000 per year to like an expensive design program at a university. Or you could also say, hey, I'm investing my own time, so I'm taking like online courses, I'm reading books, and I'm offering my help for free. So trying to like get like an internship, and you don't need like an internship at some brand name, like, hey, I've been an intern at Google or IBM or something, because that's not really. I mean, yeah, sure. Then you have their brand name to put on your CV. It really comes down to it's if you can find some talented people who are ambitious in a small agency or in a company who's doing something that is unrelated to UX design, but they know they have a need for UX design and they're also ambitious, then I would go there and offer my help as like an unpaid intern, and just see this. That's like an investment, because you can pay 40,000 per year, or you can just pay with your own time. So I'd go for the unpaid. It doesn't really matter if it's paid or unpaid internship. It's what you want to get out of the internship is not the money. It's about the more you can work, the better. The more you can work your muscles, the better.
Right. So we lost quality on the video there for a little bit. So we lost a few of your words, but I think can I just summarize? By saying that you're saying it's an internship's great. It's not about the brand. It's about whatever experience you can get. So that may be with a well-known brand, but if you can pick up a project for the school up the road that's equal value, it's more just about it's flexing your muscles a little bit. Is that fair?
Absolutely, yeah. So you just pick up that project for your school up the road and just work really hard with them and just get a lot of experience under your belt. That's what it's all about. You could also try to go for an internship at Google, but then it's not really that. It's just a matter of like how hard you can work and how much you can work on something that will build your knowledge and skills.
Sure. Cool. Well, we're approaching the top of the hour, Mads. Do you want to take just a couple of minutes to wrap up and maybe to tell people how they can get in touch with, how can they find out more about your interest courses, how they can get in touch with you? Maybe we could connect on the forums.
Absolutely. So well, first of all, thanks to you, Hawk, and also to Luke for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's super early morning in Denmark, and I'm full of energy now after all these questions. So and full of positivity. So that's really a fantastic sign. I just really hope for all the people who are listening that they hopefully become more and more interested in user experience, and that they'll just follow that passion and just really go all in on it. Because user experience design, or design in general, just has an enormous potential, not only for your professional lives, because it's a fantastic career, so that's the sort of a more egocentric perspective, but also simply for the sake of the human race. So that's the altruistic perspective. Design can really change the world. I mean, if you just think of like all your frustration with ticket vending machines on a busy train station or something, I mean, just imagine if like there were more like user experience designers, usability people, designers. I mean,
Cool. I've lost your video altogether, Mads.
Graceful. So a better place.
You're back. We lost you. We lost you for a minute. Then we've lost quality of video. But that's probably, maybe I should.
I think my quality is getting a bit bad.
Yeah, it is. So I'll take the opportunity to wrap up, perhaps, and just to say thank you so much for your time. I know it's early morning and you're energized. It's getting pretty late for me, but I'm also energized. It's a lot of the questions you've addressed tonight are questions this morning, are questions that I get asked an awful lot in our community. So it's really awesome to hear. To hear your thoughts, and someone that spends their day immersed in this world. So we really appreciate your time. For everyone that's listening, please check out the Interaction Design Foundation for Mads' contact details. Please check out UX Mastery, community.uxmastery.com. If you've got questions there, I will make sure that they get answered either by the community or by myself or by Luke or by Mads. But yeah, huge thank you for your time, Mads, and it's been a real pleasure to have you your company tonight.
Likewise. Thanks so much for having me, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks. There's not much left of it.
Bye.
See ya.